No one was supposed to answer that phone. A German number flashed across the executive conference screen, and a room full of polished adults froze like they'd just seen a ghost. The CEO, Grant Holloway, a self-made millionaire with $1 billion reputation on the line, tightened his jaw. This call was the final green light on a massive overseas contract. Lose it, and layoffs would hit by nightfall. Outside the glass-walled war room sat Eli Carter, 12 years old, backpack on his knees, waiting quietly for his mom to finish her shift. His mother, Monique Carter, a black janitor pulling an extra daytime job to keep the lights on, kept her eyes down, and her cart rolling, trying to be invisible in a place that didn't like reminders of real life. Then the phone rang again, and the panic started. Their interpreter was unreachable. The outsourced service was down. Someone tried English wrong move. The voice on speaker sharpened, impatient final. Eli's shoulders stiffened. He understood every word. His late grandmother had taught him German in a tiny kitchen, not for school, just so she wouldn't disappear. Eli whispered, "He's about to hang up." A few executives laughed. Then Holloway snapped his head toward the hallway. "You speak German," some Eli said, throat tight. Silence. The caller barked another warning. Holloway scanned the room, expensive suits, empty answers, then made the only call that mattered. Let the kid talk. Eli took the phone with shaking hands and spoke calm, clear, careful. He didn't grandstand. He translated, clarified a deadline, fixed a legal clause, and kept the deal alive. When the line finally clicked off, nobody cheered. They just stared. Because in 1 minute, a janitor's son had saved what the powerful couldn't. For a beat, the whole floor stayed frozen, like the building itself was holding its breath. Monique Carter grabbed the handle of her cleaning cart so hard her knuckles turned pale. "Eli, we're leaving." Now, she whispered, already bracing for security, for shouting for the kind of trouble people like her didn't survive at places like this. But Grant Holloway didn't yell. He didn't smile either. He just lifted one hand, quiet but absolute. "Wait." Eli's voice came out small. "Am I in trouble, sir?" Holloway's eyes flicked from the boy's worn backpack to the glass room full of executives who suddenly looked embarrassed in their tailored suits. "Not yet," he said, then turned to Monique. "Ma'am, I need a minute." Monique swallowed. "I'm sorry. I know he shouldn't be here. I didn't have a choice. The school—" Her words tumbled out the way apologies always had, like survival instinct. Holloway cut her off, not cruelly, just firmly. "Stop. This isn't about that." He stepped closer, lowering his voice like the hallway had ears. "How does a 12-year-old speak German when my entire team couldn't say one complete sentence?" Eli glanced at his mom, then back at the CEO. "My grandma taught me," he said. "She was from Berlin. She used to say if she stopped speaking it, she'd disappear. So she made me talk with her every night, even when she got sick." Something shifted in Holloway's face. Less steel, more weight. He looked past them toward that expensive conference room and exhaled slowly. "All right," he murmured. "Then we're going to talk. Because what happened today shouldn't be an accident." Holloway didn't escort them out. He escorted them in. The glass door swung open, and Monique felt the temperature drop, cold air, colder eyes. A dozen executives snapped their heads around like she'd dragged a storm into the room. Laptops were open. Charts glowed. Coffee sat untouched. The kind of silence that screams. On the table, the phone still lay there like a live wire. One analyst whispered, "The German firm postponed twice. Today was final confirmation." Another voice tighter. "If we lose this, we cut 2 departments, minimum." Monique's stomach twisted. She stared at the carpet, fighting the urge to apologize for breathing. Holloway didn't let them hide behind jargon. "Where's the interpreter?" he asked. A man in a navy suit shook his head, not answering. "Outsourced line is down too." Then English someone offered, desperate. Holloway's stare could have cracked glass. "They don't want English. They want clarity in German." As if on cue, the phone buzzed again. A sharp, impatient ring. Heads turned, hands hovered. Nobody moved. The speaker clicked on. A voice poured through, fast, irritated, already halfway out the door. A few executives caught scattered words like drowning men grabbing air. Eli's eyes locked on the phone. He didn't look proud. He looked alert. Like he'd been here before, just in a smaller room with a grandmother's tired smile correcting his vowels. He leaned toward Holloway. "He's asking who's authorized to sign?" Eli said quietly. "And he wants the delivery delay clause clarified. He's done waiting." Holloway's jaw tightened. He looked at the room, expensive degrees, expensive confidence, no usable answers. Then back at a 12-year-old with a worn backpack. "Okay," he said, voice low and final. "Kid, stay close. Tell me exactly what he's saying, word for word." Eli swallowed once, then reached for the phone like it might burn him. His hand trembled, but his voice didn't. "Guten Morgen," he said into the receiver. Careful, respectful, steady. The German voice paused, mid-rant, surprised into silence. Eli glanced at Holloway, who gave a single nod. "Keep going." Eli switched the speaker slightly away from his face and listened, eyes narrowing like he was sorting puzzle pieces. Then he answered in short, clean sentences. No filler, no bravado, just precision. "He wants to know who's authorized to sign," Eli murmured, covering the mic with his palm. "And he's still hung up on the delivery delay responsibility clause." Holloway leaned in. "Tell him I'm the signing authority." Eli relayed it, then hesitated. The room held its breath. What one executive snapped. Eli didn't flinch. "If I say it like that, it sounds vague, like we're stalling." Holloway's eyes sharpened. "Then how would you say it?" Eli thought for 2 heartbeats. "Say the document is in final legal review, and the email is scheduled to be sent within minutes. Not will try. Scheduled." A lawyer shoved a marked-up page across the table. Eli skimmed it fast, then spoke again in German, asking the caller to confirm the exact wording he needed. The tone on the other end shifted, less threat, more negotiation. Holloway flicked 2 fingers at his legal team. They started typing like their jobs depended on it, because they did. Eli listened, nodded, then delivered the final line with quiet authority. "You will receive the written confirmation shortly. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your—" A click. The call ended. For a second, nobody moved. Not a single clap. Just the sound of a 12-year-old exhaling and a room full of adults realizing who had just saved them. The silence that followed wasn't celebration. It was confusion, almost fear, like everyone had just watched gravity change direction. Eli carefully set the phone back down as if it might explode and took a half-step toward the door. Can we go now?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper, barely above. Monique moved fast, reaching for him. "Yes, sir. We'll be out of your way," she said, already pulling her cart, already shrinking herself the way she'd learned to survive. Her heart hammered. In her head, she could hear the word that always came next in places like this security. But Grant Holloway raised a hand again. Not harsh, not kind, just final. "Hold up," he said. Monique froze. Eli's fingers tightened around his backpack strap. Holloway stepped closer, and for the first time that day, his voice wasn't a command meant for a boardroom. It sounded like a man trying to understand something that didn't fit inside his world. "You said you learned German from your grandmother," he told Eli. "Tell me about that." Eli glanced at Monique, then back at Holloway. "She came here when she was young," he said. "She married, but she never stopped missing home. She'd say, if she stopped speaking German, she'd disappear." His throat tightened. "So she made me talk with her every night, even when she got sick. Even when she was tired." Monique blinked hard, staring at the floor so nobody would see the shine in her eyes. Holloway's jaw worked like he was swallowing something heavier than pride. "So you didn't learn it to impress anyone," he said softly. "You learned it to keep someone alive." Eli nodded once. Holloway looked back at the executives behind him, then back at them. "All right," he said. What happened today isn't going to be ignored. Grant Holloway didn't make a speech. He didn't call in cameras. He just said, "Come with me," and led Monique and Eli down a quieter hallway, away from the glass, away from the whispers, into an office that looked more tired than powerful. Sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. The kind of room where big decisions happen in silence. Monique sat like she was afraid the chair might accuse her. Eli kept both hands on his backpack. Holloway folded his hands on the desk. "I'm not here to punish you," he said to Monique. "And I'm not here to turn your kid into a feel-good story." He looked at Eli. "What you did today wasn't luck. It was preparation." Monique's voice shook. "Sir, we don't want trouble. I shouldn't have brought him. Stop apologizing." Holloway cut in, not unkindly. "You brought him because you had no choice." He slid a folder across the desk. "Here's mine." Eli stared at the papers like they were written in another language. "This," Holloway said, tapping the first page, "is a scholarship offer. A strong school. Language program included. Transportation covered. Support. Structure." He tapped the second page and turned to Monique. "And this is for you. A permanent position, stable hours. Benefits. No more living on last-minute extra shifts." Monique's breath caught. Why would you do this?" Holloway's eyes stayed steady. "Because if a room full of professionals can't see talent sitting in a hallway, then the problem isn't you." He leaned back, voice lower. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering dignity. So you never have to choose between keeping a job and keeping your child safe." Eli swallowed hard. "If we accept," he said quietly, "it's because I want to learn, not because I answered a phone." Holloway nodded once. "Good. That's the only reason I'd respect." The next week didn't feel like a miracle. It felt like whiplash. Monique still woke up before sunrise, but now it was for a regular daytime shift. A badge that didn't expire, a schedule that didn't change without warning. People said her name out loud. A security guard actually smiled. Small things. The kind of small things that make you realize how long you've been treated like air. Eli, though, walked into his new school like he was walking onto a stage he never asked to be on. The hallways were brighter. The desks didn't wobble. Kids talked about vacations and new phones like it was weather. Eli kept his head down, backpack clutched tight, trying to shrink back into the old version of himself. That first night he opened his notebook and wrote one sentence, "I don't think I belong here." Monique saw it by accident and didn't scold him. She just sat beside him at the kitchen table, the same table where bills used to pile up. "Listen to me," she said softly. "You didn't get here because somebody felt sorry for us. You got here because you showed who you are." The next day in German class, the teacher asked for a volunteer to read. Nobody moved. A few students laughed nervously. Eli's heart pounded. His hand lifted anyway. When he read, the room changed. His pronunciation was clean, confident, like a voice from an old kitchen had stepped into the present. The class went quiet, not pity quiet, respect quiet. At lunch, a girl slid into the seat across from him. "How did you learn to speak like that?" she asked. Eli hesitated, then said the truth. "My grandma." And for the first time since the contract call, Eli didn't feel like a headline. He felt like a person. 6 months after that phone call, the building didn't look different, but it moved different. Monique pushed her cart through the lobby in daylight badge clipped to her chest like armor. People didn't step around her like she was furniture anymore. Some still did, eyes glued to screens, but others nodded. "Morning, Ms. Carter." A name. A pause. A human moment. Not everyone was kind. She heard it one afternoon near the executive wing, 2 voices slipping through a half-closed door. "It's just good PR," a man muttered. Holloway needed a headline. Another laughed. "A scholarship here, a permanent job there. Corporate charity." Monique's stomach tightened, but she kept moving. No argument. No tears in the hallway. Just the quiet decision to let her work speak. That Friday, her supervisor called her into his office. Monique's pulse spiked, old fear, trained and automatic. Then he slid an envelope across the desk. "Quarterly review," he said. "Open it." Her hands shook as she read excellent. "Reliable. Team leader." At the bottom, a note in pen, "Recommend advancement." Monique blinked hard. "This is real." "It's earned," he said. "You've been earning it for years." Someone finally wrote it down. That night, Eli read the review twice, then wrapped his arms around her like he was afraid she'd disappear too. "I'm proud of you, Mom." Monique laughed through a sob. "Baby, I'm supposed to say that to you." "We can both be proud," Eli said, and he meant it. A week later, Grant Holloway announced a new scholarship program for employees' kids' language training tutoring Real Pathways. He didn't mention Eli by name. He didn't have to. The culture had already started changing one good morning at a time. 1 year after the day, a German ringtone nearly brought a billion-dollar deal to its knees. The company threw its annual employee event, and Monique almost didn't go. She stood in her small apartment bathroom, smoothing a simple blouse, staring at herself like she was waiting for someone to tell her she didn't belong. Eli leaned in the doorway, taller, now shoulders less folded. "Mom," he said, gentle but firm. "You've got a badge, you've got reviews, you've got receipts. Stop shrinking." The ballroom at the hotel smelled like coffee and new carpet. Name tags, soft music. People in suits who used to walk past her now held the door open. Monique nodded, still learning how to accept normal respect without flinching. Then the lights dimmed. Grant Holloway stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. No theatrics, just that quiet authority that used to scare entire rooms into silence. "Last year," he said, "we nearly lost a crucial contract. Not because we lacked talent, but because we lacked vision." A ripple moved through the crowd. Holloway scanned the room, then pointed right at Monique. "Ms. Carter." Monique's throat locked. Eli's hand found her elbow, steadying her. The spotlight hit them like sunlight through glass. "She and her son reminded us of something we should have never forgotten." Holloway continued. "Excellence doesn't come with a pedigree. It comes with heart discipline and opportunity." Applause rose, then grew. People stood. Not out of politeness, out of respect. Monique wiped her face, laughing and crying at the same time, and Eli whispered, "See, you're not invisible." And for the first time, she believed him. 2 years later, the next call didn't come from Germany. It came from a high school auditorium packed with families folding chairs, and the kind of nervous hope you can feel in your bones. Monique sat in the front row, hands clenched around the program like a lifeline. Eli, now a senior, in a borrowed gown, stepped up to the microphone, scanned the crowd, and for a split second his eyes found his mother's. Same look as that day in the hallway. "Do I speak, or do I disappear?" He spoke. "Most of you know me as the kid who answered a phone," he said, voice steady. "But that wasn't the moment that changed my life. The moment that changed my life was when someone finally looked at my mom and saw a person, not a uniform." A hush rolled through the room. Eli continued. "We all get a moment like that. Not always in German, not always in an office, but a moment where you choose stay quiet or show up." Monique wiped her cheeks, not bothering to hide it. Behind her, Grant Holloway stood near the back wall, arms crossed, listening like the words were hitting somewhere deeper than business. After graduation, Eli didn't chase a spotlight. He chased a promise. Within a few years, he started a language program for kids who couldn't afford tutors. Community centers donated books. Volunteer teachers. Talent's everywhere, he'd tell them. Opportunity isn't. So we build it. Monique kept rising at the company too, supervising a team, then operations, making sure no one on her watch ever had to apologize for existing. And on the hardest days, Eli would tap the worn notebook and whisper, "We're still here, Grandma." Years later, people still tried to reduce it to a headline, "The janitor's kid who saved a deal." But the truth was bigger and quieter. It wasn't the German. It was everything that came before the German. It was Monique Carter, wiping down office floors at midnight, counting dollars at a kitchen table, showing up even when nobody said thank you. It was Eli learning words from his grandmother, not for grades, not for applause, but so someone he loved wouldn't vanish. And it was one powerful man finally admitting a terrifying fact: the company almost collapsed because it only valued talent when it came packaged in the right suit. That's why the real ending isn't Eli's foundation, or Monique's promotion, or Grant Holloway's scholarship program. The real ending is this: a system changed because one family refused to believe they were invisible, and one leader chose dignity over indifference. Your big moment won't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's a phone call. Sometimes it's speaking up in a room where you feel too small. Sometimes it's simply refusing to apologize for taking up space. And here's the part that hits hardest: you may already be preparing for your moment without realizing it. Every late night, every sacrifice, every skill you learned just because, none of it is wasted. If this story touched something in you, tell me in the comments. Have you ever had a moment where you almost stayed silent but didn't? Or a time someone finally saw you? And if you want more stories that remind you what people are really made of, like, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one.